Assalamu alaikum, everybody who watching Naya Din TV. Hamesha ki tarah, as in every time, 6 o'clock till 7 o'clock. Me and Mohsan Qureshi host this program. Today, as you can see in the screen, there's quite a few guests. I just really put Mohsan to really deal with that. Mohsan, if you just want to recap and introduce the guests in that.
Yep. Thank you, Faheem. Welcome everyone again to the Mindset Programme. As always, just want to thank everyone for the support, for the feedback, for getting involved, and all the kind words that they share with us. So thank you. So last week we looked at a bit of discrimination which happens within our own culture. We talked about the caste system, how maybe it's a bit of a stumbling block, how we need to adapt, and what religion and culture are a bit of a mix. And I thought with everything that's going on in the world currently, and even us being victims of discrimination due to our cultures or a lot of racism taking place, we thought it's only right that we look into racism and why it still exists as a global issue. So before I go into it fully, I'd like to introduce our two new guests to the Mindset Programme because it's the first time they're joining us. So we've got Mr. Shane Sanger. If you want to just let us know a bit about yourself, Shane.
Hi guys, thanks Muzzy for inviting me onto the show. I've been a big fan of this since this series has started. I think it's a great thing you're doing. Having it in English is definitely, attracted me in that way and many other people I know. A bit about myself is I'm a British-born Sikh. My parents come from Kenya and India. They're originally from the Punjab in India. So I was brought up here. I actually was brought up in a public school. So I've always been in a multicultural surrounding. Always been brought up with British people, but also sort of people from Hong Kong and across the world. Today I work as a business analyst for quite a big company. And still today I'm working with a lot of different people as well. And always having to meet different cultures and go to different countries as well. I'm a keen traveler. I absolutely love culture and study religion as well privately. So for me, this was a really good program to join.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for that, Shane. And I'm pretty sure the reason for us calling you was because we know you'll be able to share a lot of experience personal and add a lot of value. So thank you for joining us for today. And we've also got Mr. Shinoon Ali. If you'd like to introduce yourself as well a bit.
Hello, everyone. I'm joining in actually from Toronto, Canada. I'm a Canadian Pakistani, so I have dual citizenship. I have been involved in Canadian politics, have been involved in law here. I used to have my own practice for 10 years. And though I'm not practicing anymore, I've found other passions. But social work and involvement in the community has been a big part of my life and would remain part of my life till I die. And that's why these matters are very critical and very important to me to discuss about. Hence, I have joined this discussion.
100%. Shimon, thank you very much for joining us as well, all the way from Canada. We appreciate it. So the main thing for today, what I wanted to get into was why in this modern current day does racism still exist? I've noticed myself firsthand. I know we're fortunate we live in a country like the United Kingdom or Canada. There are loads of rights we're able to practice our religion, build our worship, and celebrate with ease. And there's other places around the world where they're not as fortunate. But every time something happens, we see a spike in the racism from even the country we're in. So previously, when there was a Brexit, I heard there was loads of things going on about the Eastern Europeans or the Asian cultures and communities that hopefully they're going to go back home now. When even more recently with the coronavirus happened, I noticed a lot of racism speech towards the people from China. And now with the Black Lives Matter situation and the murder of an innocent person, once again by police using extra force, now it seems to have spiked again. And I know loads of things have kicked off in London today and we'll go into bigger detail. For me personally, the reason why I think racism still exists is two things and they kind of go hand in hand. One of them is influence and one of them is ignorance. So why influence? I think the media in this country has a certain narrative when it comes to people of a certain religion or a certain ethnic background, and it gets pumped and it's kind of unfair. And if the same crime or the same thing was done by a person of a white background, the media narrative is very, very different. The other thing I'll say about the influence is a lot of the younger generation children still, I hear firsthand saying racist stuff, and I think that comes from the parents or the people they're around and the environments they're in. I spoke to my sister the other day, and my niece made a Black Lives Matter poster just on the back of her own accord. And when my sister asked if she knew what was taking place, she explained it a bit to her, and my niece's reply was, "Well, that's silly. It's just a skin colour." So the kids are innocent and they're pure, and it's something that's going to be fed into them by whether it's their parents or the friend circle and the people they're around. And the reason why I say it's ignorance also, because if we were to have the mentality of how some of our people are treated, that if one white person's racist, if I was to start walking around and thinking every white person I come across is racist, I'm being ignorant. But we don't think like that. There's many good as well. There's many good people in our societies, even around the world. And I've even come across many English people where if racism has happened towards me, they've offended me. So it's not all bad, but it's also not all good. And every time something happens, we see these spikes throughout the country and even the world right now. So I think there's ignorance and influence. That's two of the main things that's taking place. I was putting it out to a guest as well. What do you guys think is the reason why racism still exists in the modern day?
Can I, before anybody comes in, Shamoon, I actually press your mic on mute. There's some kind of a disturbance coming when I open your mic. If you could check your setting, otherwise it should be okay, because I'm going to open your setting now, and when we speak, there's a noise coming when we actually put mute on your mic.
I'm not sure where the noise is coming from.
Just check your Elizabeth setting, and then we'll see that. I think it's gone slightly better. Other people can start this discussion. I'm just trying to really sort this problem out.
Right, thank you, Faheem. Well, Shane, I'll come to you first, and if the audio is working a bit better, why do you think that racism still exists in the current day?
So, for me, something I've thought about, it really narrows down to education. I know that seems to be the solution for a lot of things, but if you actually economically look at increasing education, you will see knock-on factors to better quality of lives, better GDP per person, and I think you get social benefits such as less racism. Now, when I talk about education, I think everyone immediately believes it's about getting a degree, but actually I don't mean it in that way specifically. If you were to get a degree in chemistry, you're not going to really learn anything about people. So I don't think that's going to help you actually maybe change your thoughts. So when it comes to education, I think we all should educate ourselves all the time, every day, regardless of what jobs we do, maybe in cultures, maybe, in things, politics, what's going on in the world, and keeping that sort of general knowledge. If people had an interest, I believe, in other people's cultures, and you were able to understand why people did what they did, I think very quickly people would start to see sort of sense and understanding through basis of logic. And I think that's what is the problem, the education of people not understanding one another, and also not going or being interested in going to find out about it. People interested, as you've mentioned on previous shows, are, the Instagrams, the Snapchats, we're going further away. I guess when I grew up, we used to talk more about cultures and other people's cultures. I think also a point you mentioned, Mohsan, which is very true, is, news. Everyone is going to be persuaded. The news will always have an agenda. I wouldn't want to go on to, the level of maybe some people who want to talk about conspiracies and stuff, but yes, the news will always have an agenda based on what political party it supports. We saw in the Brexit campaign as well, the type of propaganda that was used. And this goes back to Nazi times. So I think that's what makes it even more important to be educated, to understand. So then, you aren't able to be manipulated. And, for people as well who were to blame, Chinese people at first for the corona, at the end of the day, it's illogical. It wouldn't be that Chinese person's fault. So I guess that's where the education of, actual universities and way of thinking comes into it. Because I think, people want to express hate, and that's also comes to a mind frame rather than actually what they mean. And I think based on that, that's where you do see divisions. But I do understand as well, though, why people might feel, maybe British people, a bit intimidated. This is their country. They've not been told about other cultures, and obviously cultures from all around the world have come and moved into their areas. Now, I'm not saying to be racist, because for me, racism is to treat someone different. But what we must understand is that people have a mentality, and we've got to look at that. If we look at our home countries, as in India and Pakistan, when the British came there, we wanted to get them out, and we did in the end. So I think there's two bits to it, but on a first sort of view at this, I'd say that education is key, and a lack of it is why racism is still so widespread.
I just want to add to your points, Jane, as well. Sorry, Faheem. And that education definitely does change the way people think and feel. You have a different type of mentality. You approach things a bit different. You tend to be a bit more open-minded. But academically, education as well within this country, I can remember we learnt about the world wars, and we learnt that if after the Second World War, the countries that were part of the Commonwealth of Britain, if they didn't support them, first of all, we'd be sat here speaking German today. We wouldn't even have won the war. And even after the war, there was such a shortage of people and males that the economy couldn't survive. So the people from the Commonwealth, people from places like Africa, India, Pakistan, came across to work in the mills in places like Bradford, which is quite common. And it was such a massive industry then that if we didn't do all this, if we didn't support them in the war, nor did we help them run their country, this country wouldn't actually be where it was today. So I think that's the other thing a lot of people seem to forget, that this we're talking within the last 100 years. And it's not far, and we do learn about it in school, but it shows how quickly people seem to forget what others done for them. Just because it hasn't happened in front of their eyes, they don't seem to realise. So I think, yeah, you made some very good points there, Shane.
Right.
I would like to come in here. Basically, you're partly right. Part of it is education. It's a question of what kind of education, right? Because in Canadian society, what we are dealing with is that racism is bad. You should not say things that are racist. It's highly discouraged. But it's become systematic here. What do I mean by systematic? It has become systematic that you would see it underlining the mindset of people. They won't speak about it. They won't be racist in front of you, but they internally are racist about things, right? So that's a difficult process to get to. That's a difficult part to get to. One example I would like to give is an exercise that was conducted by Jane Elliott. Jane Elliott was an educator, a third grade teacher that basically ran an experiment in her class where she called it blue eyes and brown eyes. So the experiment, the idea behind the experiment was to make the kids that had brown eyes feel superior and make the kids that had blue eyes feel inferior based on like how we deal with the society, how we feel like, okay, people with darker skin are inferior than people with light skin, with the white skin, right? And she kind of turned it on its head. And there were visible differences in the attitude seen among those children within the span of a day and a half. And she had to then finally disclose that this was just an experiment, right? She, till this day, she's running those experiments, not in those levels, but she's running it for adults and college students, right? And it has had significant impact on people that actually go through that experiment. So what that is showing us, that is actually showing us that it's not just about recognizing what racism is. It's further than that. It's about being able to walk into the shoes of people that are being racially undermined. And that is a tall task to handle.
Yeah.
That's not an easy process to go through. So education is part of it. It's again, like I'll go back to what kind of education it should be, right? So, yeah, so and like that's why it's very difficult in Canada, because we have educated people, the majority of people in Canada that are educated and that understand racism is wrong. But now Canadian Prime Minister, and just a day ago, RCMP, the Police Department of Canada, that's like a Royal Canadian Mounted Police, they are called.
Yeah.
Their commissioner and deputy commissioner first said that we are not sure what you mean by systematic, but 2 days ago they scoped out that yes, there is systematic racism in the organizations, including RCMP.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Just add to some of your points as well. I think it explains a bit what I was trying to say at the start as well, that we're fortunate that in certain countries we have rights and legislation and things that still protect us, but to an extent, I guess behind the scenes is also a narrative. I faced discrimination myself firsthand. It seems to be a feeling you get, and if you haven't been through it, you don't really know. Racism, I think, is a bit more outward and outspoken, and it's straight in your face. But I've been denied opportunities for progression, for promotions, just because my face didn't fit. So I totally get that in maybe the Western world, it operates slightly different. But I could also add that we are very, very fortunate, though, because there's many chances where we have been given opportunities, where we are protected, where people have gone on to do very, very well for themselves. But if we look at it as a global issue, we see people, for example, like in Palestine, it's institutionalized there, where they removed from their homes forcefully. They don't have rights. They have to walk on other sides of the road, and the treatment that they go in day out, and murder and everything and oppression that they face, it seems to be accepted worldwide, and it's because it's all that the Israelis have put in. Or even if there's other places where it's Kashmir, for example, or certain areas in China, those institutions, they are a lot more blatant. But I think this is where the hypocrisy kind of comes in, where if, for example, if we look at Iraq and statues were pulled down once upon a time there, and then the world went and decided to go and bomb the hell out of it to install democracy, and then fast forward umpteen years later, they realised all the information was wrong and it's a mistake. Whereas if we look at what's going on in current day Britain, statues are being pulled down and it's classed as criminal activity. Whereas for when it was the one group of people, it was classed as liberation. When it's classed as another group of people, oh, it's racism, it's discrimination, it's so on and so forth, these lot of vandals, these lot of criminals. And I think where there's a bit of a mixed message going on also is that I wanted to make sure I explain this, because a lot of people have been saying all lives matter. And I think people are missing what the objective is. The treatment that the black coloured people have gone through in America, the African Americans, time and time again, has got to the stage where it's become boiling point. They were bought over as slaves. They didn't have rights till recently. Time and time again, they have been detained by the police when they haven't done nothing wrong, or even if they have done something wrong or they did have a history, they've been treated completely different. Whereas America also has people like mass shootings, which happens in the high schools time and time again by a young white male. And the treatment that that gentleman got, I remember one, they took him for a drive-through and got him a bloody Happy Meal or something as well on the way. So I think this is where the frustration is building up, where why is it okay for a certain race of people to do and act a certain way, whereas at the same time when someone else does it, they branded a certain thing, or it's front news newspaper where all Muslims are terrorists and all someone are this. And that's where I think the frustration's got to with a lot of people. So the others who saying all lives matter, yet the movement that's going on, all lives do matter, but this certain group of people have time and time again been treated unfairly. And unless you haven't been through it yourself, you don't really understand how that feels.
Just before everybody comes in, Moon, you got to control yourself, right? Okay, when you're not talking, if you just put your mic on mute, right? Because that's interfering, right? Okay, when you talk, keep a control in your hand, because
I'll do that.
when your mic is on, is disturbing, right? Okay.
I think it's creating there. So I'll do that.
The first point, what actually Mr. Singha made, right? Shane Singha, saying like a lot of English people who thinking we are actually came and kind of really controlling making the population bigger, and a lot of English people are feeling pinch of that. The only things I want to correct, which is Muslims correct everything, is they went to control the whole India and all that region. They were rulers there. They wasn't gone there for a working class. They wasn't gone there for really do any work to really serve them. They actually went to rule it, and this is what they did. And that's one of the reasons we were really, as in all the Pakistani, the Indians, all the Asian subcontinent didn't like it, and that's why the whole struggle of all the leaders come, as in loads of leaders. Bhagat Singh, they talk about it. Loads of struggle they have. So the reason behind that, because they were rulers in there. So that's what I really wanted to correct. Otherwise, perfectly okay. I will let you guys carry on with it because I'm just really listening to you guys.
Oh, thank
So
you.
just on that, Faheem, yeah. So of course I understand that there were rulers there, but what my argument would be is if English people or black people went and moved to Pakistan or India into our pins, I think you would still get a sort of a mentality where they would feel people have come into our home and maybe be intimidated to their normal way of life. But my point for that is to really say, not everything is black and white, and we need to have an understanding in order to go deep into these issues and look to rectify them. If we keep telling each other this is this is how it is, I don't think we're going to get anywhere. We have to listen to people, and I think when we've seen Trump be elected and Brexit, there's a lot of silent voices out there because now it's become politically correct not to say things. We've seen this being extended to the LGBT community, which is fair. It's a level of respect. However, people are in silence. So when you see these election results come through and people are shocked, they're shocked because people are being quiet. Like it was mentioned in Canada, you may feel a racist thought, but you would just act normal about it. But that's been a facade within society, I'd say, and in the end it's gonna boil. Just coming back on another point though that we talked about, or what was mentioned, is systematically there being racism. I totally agree with that, and we see it in America. But one thing I'll say is for that is there are a number of black judges that I know of, that I've researched, who have been the decision makers on sending black young people as well to jail for a long time. So I think as we saw Barack Obama as a president, obviously, it's not as simple as that, but you are able in the UK and I'd say America to actually get somewhere. There's no actual law saying like the apartheid back in South Africa that a black person is not allowed to get this job. In fact, we see that still more in India and stuff, where you guys mentioned caste the other week, but certain castes are given certain jobs, such as police ones, for example, in the Punjab. So I think based on what I'm trying to say there, though, as well, is there are people who have done well, and I feel in order for there to be some real change, the people who have done well, the black people, let's say, if we're talking about that specific issue happening in America, these guys have to do better. They have to, with where they've got to, use that to speak out and not just maybe sit in there, be afraid to lose the positions they're sitting in. And I think based on us as well, for me, I meet a lot of people. I like to tell them I'm a Sikh. If they're not aware, it's my duty to explain to them. And I think if you meet one Sikh and you were to like me, you would have a good, positive attitude about any Sikh you met. I think, for that, there's a big responsibility. But in order. And, going back to it, yes, I see for black people in America, it's a lot harder based on sort of, what's happened over years. There are higher gun crime rates in black people, less employment, all the bad statistics, yeah? But obviously that's for a reason. So, the hard bit of this is they've got to work harder. When we've come to this country, we had a lot of racism from my father's time. Times have changed a lot, but what people have done here, especially our Asian community, because we are no different to blacks, people coming from Jamaica, we are of color, is just actually working hard and also integrating. So I think a point I want to make is the more separate we go, the less the less we can do together. And I think people I've actually met, just coming in on my personal experience, Asian people have found industry hard. They find it uncomfortable talking to English people, especially in a certain way. And that's the upbringing that Mohsen, you talked about, you know, it's upbringing matters in all of this. And I think we need to have people around all different cultures, especially mingling with English people, not segregating, and being confident with them and understanding them. Because as much as people aren't aware of our cultures, I don't believe we're fully aware of sort of the mentality of everyone else.
I just want to...
Okay, just 1 second, Mohsen. There's one of our member who actually was very active in Nyadin TV. He was here in Birmingham. He's passed away. It's very famous TV program. It's done. It's called Baba Dita. It's shocking for me, to be honest. But I thought I might as well condone him, because obviously he was doing some programs with us as well. I just find out now, obviously, one of our friends, Khwaja Amjad Mahmood, put that news through our message. So, God help him. It's very sad news I heard. So, you guys carry on with it. Sorry about that.
It's no problem. Yeah, may Allah grant Baba Dita Jannah and give the family sabr as well. Sorry, just to get back to Shane's point, I agree with what you're saying to an extent, that we all started in a similar position. We all have to try and work hard, and sometimes even extra hard, to change certain stereotypes or to fight through certain discriminations or things that we don't go through. But statistically, though, there are still discrimination and things that do take place, because even women didn't have equal rights. And even now, certain jobs men will only get and women may not get. And even then, I may be wrong here, but I'm quite confident that a lot of the times when I'm applying for a job, there's a large percentage, well, not large, there's a certain percentage of people who just look at my name and discount my abilities and my experience just based on my name. So, yeah, we do have many good in the countries we're in, and I don't disagree with that. But I do come across firsthand as well, sometimes we are at a bit of a disadvantage. And just with the America one, yeah, America's known as a land of the dreams. There's been many people of colour who have gone on to be successful, to be multimillionaires, to change and influence lives as well. But I think where it's a bit easier for us is sometimes the systems are a bit different. I mentioned it in one of my other programs, where the children, if they're in certain areas and they're disadvantaged and their homes aren't stable and financially the parents aren't well off, for that person to break the odds and come out and go successful, it's a lot harder, because they're in that bit of a bubble, and sometimes they need that extra support and guidance to break out of that. But if someone's already going through that, and then there's a system you're in which is making it even harder, the odds of them coming out is actually very slim. So I think these are maybe some of the reasons why people end up turning to crime. We face it in our own communities, and it's an ever-growing problem that gang culture is increasing in this country. Crime is increasing. We do have a lot of people of ethnic minorities involved in these, unfortunately. But on the flip side, sometimes I think, is it the environment they're in that's created this product? So not everyone is as fortunate. And but no, I do understand. We do have a lot of good people here as well. A lot of people have changed their mindsets, and you made a very good point that we've mingled a lot more. I have a lot of people who ask me about Pakistani culture or ask us about our religious beliefs, and I'm happy when they ask me, because I'd rather have somebody ask me firsthand because they're comfortable to, so I can maybe share a bit of knowledge, share a bit of wisdom, and change their approach. So it's not entirely their fault. Sometimes they just don't know, but maybe they don't come across enough of our kind of people to have that conversation. And vice versa, if we don't know something, maybe we should ask them as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely on that.
But the thing is, Jane, though, sorry, just to finish that, there's always that small minority who are backwards. So we look at ourselves first and we say there's things and issues and that problems in our culture we need to work on. Some people's mentality is backwards thinking. But if I look at the scenes today, which took place in London, where it is white supremacists, the far right, they're the exact same. They're stuck in the ways, they're backwards. They live in their own little bubble. They don't integrate with other people. And the narrative that the media says, or whatever their sources of information are, it causes like an illness. And that illness is hatred that's running through them. So they've gone today to protest against people who were doing the Black Lives Matter protest. There was nobody there. They're all in the sunshine, getting drunk out of their backsides and starting fights with police officers. So what have you actually achieved? You're meant to be going to go and protect some statues because that's what you believe you're protecting Mr. Winston Churchill. Everyone has their own opinions and views on him. I'm not going to get into that. But what have you actually achieved? You've just made yourselves look like fools. And these are the types of people I'm targeting, that these lot are the ignorant ones who get influenced by people like Tommy Robinson or what the biased media says, and because they have no brain for themselves and they have no experience and to actually go visit someone, go to a mosque, find these Asian people, actually speak to a black person and say, why are you actually so frustrated for? They don't want to know because they've got their own agendas as well.
I would like to add something here. I think we got to understand how the society is working overall. These people that we're talking about that have certain mindset, keep in mind, even when they turn on the internet and put on some video or some information they want to look at, they're generally already linked with the certain groups that would only give them the information that they're used to watching. So first of all, they're not getting information we are getting because we are already identified through the system here that, like if I'm entering search for such and such thing, it's going into the system and similar things are going to come up. So we are basically echoing whatever we are thinking into seeing what we want to see. So that's first part. Second part is they have no need to feel that they need to come and talk to us. Why would they? They're comfortable. All the doors are being opened for them. They think what we are crying about is nonsense, right? They think Black lives don't matter because there is no issue with racism, right? Because they don't see it. And they don't have eagerness to see it because they will only see it if it comes in their life, if they experience it themselves.
Yeah.
So I'm not promoting some negative behavior. What I'm saying is, are we open to meeting these people? Are we doing enough as our culture to explore it and ourselves? A lot of us, we don't even know our own culture. We're using grip on our own. And then we're supposed to go and promote it and tell these people this is our culture. We're not even doing it proudly. So how are we supposed to convince them that people from our culture are good when we're going into the meeting them and pretending to be like them? Right?
You made a very good point there, Shamoon. And one thing I'd like to say is you have to meet in the middle somewhere. So we'll generally have an open mind because we work in multicultural societies. We have friends from various religions and backgrounds, and we consider them all to be brothers. But the thing is, the mindset of these people, I get what you mean, why should they? But what they don't understand is that they're only doing a disjustice to themselves. If they were painted in a similar picture to an ethnic minority, if tomorrow the headlines of the newspapers were all about them and how wrong they were, and it talked about their race and their backgrounds and their religions like it does with an ethnic minority, maybe reality would hit home. But like you says, they're comfortable. The treatment seems to be one rule for one person, one rule for another. But in saying that, what I find interesting is years ago I watched a program and it was a documentary based on a far-right group, and one of the members ended up leaving the group. And when they followed him and they chased up with him and they found out why he left, he actually managed to get a job. So a lot of them are actually sat at home. They've got nothing better to do with their lives. They find something, this is a bit of meaningfulness for us. I'm going to latch onto this and I've got a purpose and I've got a group and people around me and we all think and feel the same. But tomorrow when this gentleman ended up getting a job, he sacked all of that off. He had money coming in and he didn't want anything to do with it. So I think that's the other thing as well. There's probably a lot more details and a lot more reasons into it, why people think and feel the way they do. But there's always these other factors as well, that whether it's influence, whether it's lack of education, whether it's because they have no job, they've got nothing better to do with the time. But yeah, I understand what you get to an extent, but it would be a benefit to them because as English society has moved on a lot, has embraced lots of cultures, how there's loads of interracial marriages now, they're actually putting a dark mark and a dark mark on the people who are actually very good to us in here. So similar how we all have good and bad in our cultures, if somebody of a Pakistani background has done something wrong, we will all condemn it. When there's been a terrorist-related incident and it's put over every newspaper, a media outlet globally, a lot of Muslim people speak up and say, this is what our religion says, they're no representation of our religion. So we don't have that mentality where it comes to them or other people that I've got a Hindu friend who's like a brother to me. I'm not going to look at Kashmir though and think all Hindus are like that. One of my best teachers when I was in college was Jewish. I'm not going to look at Israel and think that's what all Jew people are like. But then I'm also not going to do the same with English people or white people because I've met so many more which are good than bad. So isn't it about time that other people start speaking up and do something about it as well? That you lot are tarnishing our name and our good nature, because there's plenty of positives around Britain, around America, around Canada, like we mentioned. But these lot are just making, putting a bad impression for the rest of them.
Can I just come in on that, Mozzie?
Okay. Today, as you guys are discussing, I'm just listening. But I'm just going to make one point here before Mr. Shane come in there. I'm just like Shamoon said. Reality is all the overseas Asian, I will not say Pakistani because people come from India, Africa, Sri Lanka, all of these places, right? They came, they have a lot of good thing with their culture, and they have a lot of good thing in here. And I think they're in a better positions to choose good and bad in both culture, right? Okay. In fact, with their reflection, their attitude, they will be really ambassador of the two cultures. They can take good and bad in there. So, like Shamoon said, we don't know our own culture. We do. There is a good and bad in any culture. Like we're talking about in England, and a lot of English people are actually sitting in their cocoon kind of a thing. They don't want to listen to anybody. They are quite racist, and they really wants to make people like Nigel Farage. He will be talking all the time. You can't really talk any sense out of him. So it's one of them things. But I personally think a lot of overseas Asian who comes all over the Europe, they actually serve a lot of purposes. Majority of works we done from the beginning up to now, we are hard-working nation. We work. I'm just giving you an example, right? Okay. I mean, I have one of the cab company in there. I have a driver. I'm just as an example, I'm explaining you. I have the English drivers and I have the Asian drivers, right? The English driver, it comes bang on 8 hour shift, and after that he doesn't want to know. Doesn't matter how work is busy. But when I find the Asian driver, when he knows the work is busy, he will work extra 7 8 hours. So basically, what I am really saying, he was actually hungry for work and he was working hard. So basically, it's all good and bad. I mean, you can say probably he's doing his health in because he's doing extra hour. But in reality, they were working hard and providing the services, which is we could not get that from the English drivers because they're gonna come 8 o'clock. They're gonna whichever time they will do the 8 hour shift and go home. I mean, this is plus and negative is everything. You guys can bring into yourself now.
Yeah.
I was just going to pick up on. I would actually agree with Shimon on that previous comment though, about not so much, let's say, the working or the culture, but more of the people who are born in, I don't know about Canada, but Britain. If I talk about Sikhs, yes, they call themselves Sikhs, including myself. I don't wear turban, which is how many people don't when they came here. But if I ask many about the religion, they don't really know. But what's more interesting is they don't go to find out. So in that sense, what identity do they have? What are they fighting for? You know, in a sense, for me, they've become completely British and they're not aware of their origins. And fair enough. But why I say that is because I see, you know, a lot of Asians and English people and everyone fighting for Black Lives Matter, which is a movement and a fight that's going on in America. But, you know, that's not the only struggle. There's far more worse struggles, especially if you look in Africa, all over Africa, black people killing black people, even Arabs killing black people in places like Darfur. There's genocides going on every day. They have gone on for years. You know, the way we work today, if something comes across the social platforms, we pick it up for a couple of weeks, you know, really get into it, probably forget about it in a month. So what I'd say is, you know, once again, coming to that education, people aren't aware of this. So they're fighting for something because it's sort of, you know, cultural. But if they understood their own sort of cultures, such as Sikhs, there's struggles still going back in India, you know, being a minority. So I think based on that, with the all lives matter bit that you said, Mohsan, earlier, I think it is relevant. But the thing is, there are struggles everywhere and everyone has to sort of go up and fight their struggle. I don't believe it's any worse in America than it is in many other places of the world. Also, I just like to share a story in the sense that being Sikhs, Pakistan opened their border up in the last year to Kartarpur, where Guru Nanak Dev Ji finished his life effectively, and there was a Gurdwara built there. And I know many Sikhs who went, my whole family went, but I knew Sikhs who weren't who had a view of Pakistan, as you would. No one would ever have gone, and they were shocked. When they went there, they were treated unbelievably. Imran Khan did a very good thing, and even people who were really anti came back with a changed mind. I couldn't believe it. I wanted to share that example because coming back to my main argument here of education, which I'm pushing. Once again, that's not education of reading a book. That's going there, seeing people, meeting them, learning what is it really like. And I think until you do that, like a lot of us, we were talking, we were watching, but in order to sort of to really know, you've got to get up and do the action, meet the people, go and talk to the other, religions and stuff. And something my father does here, or the temple, they all meet, whether it's the Jewish temple, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, and they get together and they discuss issues. And I think that's a really positive thing. So I think older people are doing it, but the youth now, as in, or people my age, they need to come and fill that gap in as well for a solution.
Shane, I totally agree with the second point you did. People kept an open mind and they wanted to go for pilgrimage and realize this experience. And the ones who are backwards and stuck in their ways, this is why I mentioned ignorance. Ignorance is one of the main reasons. If they're going to be like, no, these people are this, and this, we don't want nothing to do with them, they're always going to be like that. You can try to explain it 100 times, but it comes within a person's oneself if they want to change. It's like if someone's got a bad habit, if someone swears a lot, you can say to them 1,000,000 times, stop swearing. But until that person doesn't want to make that change, it's not going to happen. But the same applies to the pockets in our country as well. So the majority of the British people are brilliant. I have no qualms against them and no nothing. But then there's a small pocket, and we all have our own small pockets of the people who are actually just backwards thinking and they're ignorant and they're stuck in their ways. And I just want to come to a point, because we're talking about a global issue here. So we've got a prime minister now in Pakistan like Imran Khan, and he's trying to be forward thinking and cause peace within the neighbours and trying to make that region stronger within each other and support each other. But when we have people like Donald Trump on the other side of the sea, where if he's coming across a certain way, he's meant to be a representation of his people and his nation. This is why I say influence is a big thing as well, because if they've got a leader who's acting a certain way and says all sorts of outlandish stuff and it's acceptable, how are the rest of the people who are living in that country then going to act? So this is the other thing where I say where influence comes in. So if Imran Khan's trying to do peace and support and good with your neighbours and whatever else have you, the rest of the people are going to follow suit. But if you've got a leader who's influencing and acting a certain way, this is when things like racism and discrimination become a lot more popular as well. Because if the president can get away with it, who's arguably the most powerful man on the planet, then everyone else thinks so it's acceptable.
I've got to agree with that, and as I said before, the people, the leadership effectively, they have to represent this. If they don't represent it, it will never filter down. I do agree with you with Donald Trump. I understood at first the economy has grown, of America. Points like that I like to say, because Trump is not all bad, but when it comes to sort of the global warming side or the moral factors such as this, it's been disgraceful. So I totally agree with that. But just coming back, that's what pushes myself that we can't actually rely now on leaders and people doing the right thing. I think it's the daily interactions, and each of us are as responsible, as I was saying before.
I think it's also important, though. I know we've got maybe 17 or so minutes left. We've spoke a lot about what is going on and various reasons as to why racism or discrimination and things exist. But I also want to touch into it and see if there's any other solutions we can try and find as well. I know we've dipped a bit in and out of it as well, but some places it's systematic and it's a lot harder to break because the law allows them, if these people are of a different race, they're lesser than you and whatever else have you. But is there anything we can do in the day-to-day here? Like, is protesting actually working? Or is protesting becoming a bit too violent? I want to just add a few points though as well, based on from my conflict management training days, is that when it comes to people's, the escalation model, it goes from frustration, anger, aggression, and then violence. And I think the other thing people need to be mindful of is that if the media try to paint a certain narrative, going out and making peaceful protests, I personally believe sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. I think it depends on if we as a public are protesting about something, if the people in power, if the leaders are actually the open-minded, conscience type of people where we're going to stand by our people, then I think it works because you're making that noise, you're being peaceful, and yeah, the message gets through, and the person on top, ultimately, they're the ones who make the decisions. They're the ones who pull the strings. They're the ones who are going to change the way the system runs. But I think on the other hand, if it's going to become violent, if riots start, I know there's things like agent provocateurs, which is like a government tactic where they will go and start riots themselves, whether it's police or government people, and they get the whole crowd rallied up then, and then tomorrow the media is going to say, see, this is what these people are like. They're going around vandalizing, building, pulling down statues, breaking into stores. This is why we have to be aggressive with them when we detain them. So I think we have to be mindful. If protest is one of the things we're considering a solution, I'm a bit 50-50. I'm open to people to explain it to me a bit better whether it does work. But are there other solutions? What do we think we need to do to try and change this mindset?
Well, protest is one form of solution, and the reason I say that is as long as it's a peaceful protest, these people are getting opportunity to voice their concerns and basically move the powerful people to make those decisions, right? Because they see there is a movement, which is why we are seeing a lot of discussion about this topic. Otherwise, how many times before there have been incidents where an unfortunate person has been killed due to racial violence, right? This is not the first instance, right? And it's the matter of how fair and how responsible the protest is. We feel like only people in power have control over what's going to happen, but that's not true. Thing is, every single one of us can make a change individually into our lives, which would impact everyone that we are connected to in one way or the other. If we don't represent ourselves right, then people will see us in negative light. If we hold ourselves up high and we represent morally intact individual, then people will see us in that light sooner or later. It might not be immediate, right? And once we have passed through that time that they have finally realized who we are, they may see us for who we are and realize that not everyone is bad and would in turn change their mind, right? It's a slow process. It's a gradual process. It's very hard, very easy to reverse it with President like Donald Trump coming into power and making it widely acceptable to talk about racism as if it's nothing and it's fair. But to move it back to the line in the right direction and to make it so that people would realize that everyone is human beings, we have to individually take those steps. Like I'll give example from my life, right? If tomorrow, by the way, I have two daughters, right? If tomorrow one of my daughters comes in and says, well, Dad, I want to marry this black guy, right? What would be my response? Am I examining that? Or am I just looking at the outside going like, oh, well, racism is bad, Black Lives Matter, right? What change am I bringing in myself? Am I going to see that individual as like, okay, this is a guy,
Yeah,
just a black guy,
Can
right?
I just come in there, right? Okay, I just seen all your discussion. I think Mohsen's try to make a positive out of it, how we can really go further down. One thing is for definite, all the world, peoples has struggled because always power corridors are suppressing different kind of form of peoples. The peoples who have more money, the factory owners, they don't want their workers to give more money and things like this, right? This struggle is always on, and you're not gonna get nowhere unless you carry on with this struggle, right? Okay. Saying that at the same time, like we give an example of Imran Khan or Justin Trudeau, suppose is the Canadian, his overall impression is a very helpful person and he accepts certain things. So that's a good signals for the country, right? Uh, I'm sorry. I hope Shane doesn't mind. Narendra Modi doesn't have that impression anymore because he is really expressing all the peoples there, even the Hindu low caste, the Sikhs, the Muslims. He is really the type of person, the type of belief he has. He shouldn't be a leader there because the guy who actually think he's raised, the Brahman is the only superior. His ideology is just like a Hitler ideology.
Yeah.
So basically, what I'm really saying, we always have to support everybody or anybody when they fighting for their freedom. It can be
Yeah.
not agree to us, but this is their freedom, and we need to get into some kind of a common agenda where we accept it. Like Shamoon just mentioned, I might feel the same way if my daughter's going to marry out the caste. Regardless of how liberal I am probably thinking my daughter is married into our own cause. It'll be a lot easier, right? Okay, but we have that kind of a decency. Not even we liking it, but if it's our children who making that decisions, we let them do it, but certain people won't. It's just one of them thing is kind of a stereo kind of a things is, but what I'm really saying to you, I agree with it because like we are Pakistani or Muslim, we have our values. We try to really stick with it. At the same time, we don't want to cross that border where we're really affecting somebody else privacy or somebody else freedom. So that's what we need to really find out. And basically, to me, all leaders like who actually have a positive impact. People talk about it. I'm giving you an example. Nelson Mandela, 28 years of prisons, he came out. He should be hating every white person crossing by. But what he preached to all the black guys, forgive everything, right? And now South Africa is call him a big leader. People really use him as a praise him. So it's basically anybody does good thing, does decent thing. People always remember. And we need to encourage any hooliganism. We don't need to encourage. Even if this struggle the Africans having black people, you want to call it, whichever you want to call it, we call brown ourselves. So if they actually doing that, they got to be decent about it, and they should really raise their voice, and we all support them for the right cause, not the
Yeah.
wrong cause. So I think this is the positive things.
Can I just come in on that?
Good.
Faheem, so as you mentioned, I just want to say, so that's a good point. Would you let your daughter marry a black person? I mean, Sikhs are the same, but do you know what? I tell you what, I know many Catholics, I know many Greeks, I know many other cultures, and they would want to marry their own. Now the question is that racist? Because you follow a tradition, you have a desire to continue something. No, it isn't. That's why you have to, for me, go back to my point of understanding. And maybe if someone explained it that we would want a Muslim to marry Muslim so that you could do certain things in your marriage or live a certain life together, and keep certain sort of beliefs, then that's quite understandable. I think we just, it's deemed as we will not marry out because it is racist, but actually it's more to maintain a certain way of life. So I think, that's a great point. And that's sort of the sort of conversations that actually have to come out. And something like that is not a bad thing. If you're able to understand, why you're saying what you're doing. Another thing is just to add on what you're talking about, President Modi, Prime Minister Modi. Look, I totally agree. For me, I think an attitude we all have to have is Muslims are being treated completely unfairly. The UN should be involved in it, I believe, within the Gujarat areas. Now, only because I'm not a Hindu, that doesn't mean I don't care. Sikhs actually are meant to protect all faiths. They carry a kapan, a long dagger. And the point is that if anyone is being oppressed, so if a Muslim was, and this has happened in Gujarat, it's your duty to protect them. And a lot of Sikhs are protecting a lot of Muslims and taking them into their house. So I think we all need that attitude. We're all one. Yeah. So even if, Mohsen, someone I've known for a long time, he's my brother. It doesn't mean I need him to be a Sikh. I want him to be the best Muslim he is. He wants me to be the best Sikh he is. Together we can do a lot of good things. And we don't always have to, I believe, make everyone come onto each other's same page. It's more just about discussing why you believe in what you do. Also, just want to come back on the point of protesting. So, with the guys and the protesting that happened in America, I think when now people are looting, and it's not just black people looting, majority maybe, but there are a lot of other cultures. It totally takes away the whole sort of value of what they're doing. And it sort of gives the ammunition to the people on the other side. Well, there you go. That's exactly why we can't trust them. So obviously, no, to go violent and everything is absolutely unacceptable if you're going to win the message through the system. If you need to defend yourself, then absolutely, when it comes to it in a violent way, then you defend. But to attack like that, I don't agree. And why? Because if you get a number of signatures in this country, it has to, on a topic, it has to be brought up in Parliament.
Yeah.
So we need to, as a culture, start getting clever, start getting our people into the right positions and go about things properly. And if you have these people, as we've seen, we've had Sajid Javid, who was a chancellor. He's from Rochdale, Pakistani. We've got Rishi as a chancellor. We've got Priti Patel. The Canadian government are full of Sikhs as well. It's these people that we can help us do things the right way. And I'm a big believer of that, because as much as it's frustrating, I just believe it's the only way. And when you talk about leaders such as Nelson Mandela and the struggles they went through and, how long he was in prison, the thing is, in the end, they did it. Maybe not at first, but they did it, that he did become the president. And I think we need to keep to that approach.
Yeah, brilliant. I think everyone made some really, really good points. And one of the things that I just want to add as well is that, Shane, you mentioned that, yeah, we are like brothers. I've got brothers who are Sikh, Hindus, Muslim, non-Muslim, atheist, whatever else it is. And what helps me is that we have this dialogue, we have this discussion. So when I was talking about the pockets of people in the various cultures where they're stuck in their ways, it's up to them to open that dialogue. I'm more than happy for anyone to come and ask and question, and I'll try to answer it the best I can to the truth of what I understand. But we may not agree and we may not see eye to eye on everything, but you respect it. And I think that's what makes the world go round. We all have our differences, we all have our ups and downs, and we all have our good and bad. But I think when it comes to a global issue, we need to be careful that we don't paint everyone with the same brush just because someone's been ignorant or just because a media is trying to push their own agenda or paint a certain narrative. A lot of people need to have their own mind, use their own brain a bit, go out there and explore. The world is a much bigger place than you think, and the people you come across, and I mentioned it in the last one, you probably have a lot more in common than you do differences. We are all humans at the end of the day. That's one race we are all a part of. And if you believe in religions, you believe you come from one. And it's again, and like you mentioned a bit about your own beliefs as well, and even in Islam, it says, and it was the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, his last sermon, that no Arab has superiority over a non-Arab, and no black over a white, and vice versa. And the only thing that separates you are your good deeds and your actions. So Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, abolished racism 1400 years ago. A lot of our scriptures and all of things talk about peace, talk about unity, even keeping peace and good relations with people is seen as a very high quality that you have amongst you. But I think there's only so much we can do, but we need to keep having these conversations, be open, be approachable. If someone comes and asks you, they may just be a bit ignorant, but they may not have had the opportunity to ask someone. So we shouldn't take offense to it either. And it might touch a bit of a nerve and it's like, well, that's a silly question. But we shouldn't see it like that. We should see we're trying to spread some wisdom. We're trying to help people gather a bit of an understanding. And I think we need to just be a bit more welcoming to this as well. We're happy to criticize our own, and we know we've got a lot we need to work on, but it should not be any different for any other cultures. They should look at themselves also and think we need to strive to become the best people we can also be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mohsen, Shamoon, you want to put it into it because we only got 1 minute left. We want to conclude.
Just wanted to say one short thing that it's all about, like, going back what you just said, it's all about the mindset. We have to have open mindset. We have to be willing to see things for what they are, right?
Yeah.
And only then we would be able to welcome and understand other people, and other people have to have open mindset to be able to welcome and understand us.
100%.
I think in the end, as in Shamoon said, the mindset, our program is called the mindset. And the mindset has to be correct. And I think we need to really wake people up to keep their mindset right and stand for the right, not for the wrong. In the end, I will say thank you. All you guys are actually joining the program. Unfortunately, one of our person, Baba Detta, who's passed away, which is quite painful. I'm not really quite chuffed with it. But suppose this is things happen, right? Okay. So I'm actually saying in the end, as usual, everybody keep watching now. Then follow us on Facebook and YouTube. We'll be seeing you next Saturday, same time. Some more peoples. Me and Mohsen will be involving loads of other peoples and keep trying to wake peoples up. Thanks, Mr. Shane. You put a very good wallet point, and same to you, Shamoon. Thank you.
Thank you,
Cheers,
guys.
guys. Thank you.